The Box Seat, brought to you by our stable of sponsors: Woodland Stud, Brecon Farms, New Zealand Bloodstock Standardbred, Stonewall Stud, the clubs Alexandra Park, Cambridge, Addington and Ashburton, Garrard's Horse and Hound, and IRT. It's your horse and our passion. Hi everyone, welcome into another edition of Your Box Seat, and a big thank you to our stable of sponsors. Michael Guerin's with me again. Busy old week ahead domestically, Michael, and some excellent racing across the Tasman both last weekend and again this weekend too.
Yeah, hi Greg. A big hi to everybody watching around New Zealand or in Australia if you're watching us on Sky. Seems like every week we tune into the show now. There's some more big news coming out. A couple of weeks ago, of course, the All-Stars. Last week we caught up with Dexter Dunn. And Greg, more horses not coming to Auckland for the carnival there for a variety of reasons. We'll cover off early in the show tonight.
Yeah, and we're also going to get straight into the preview because this is the first decent meeting at Auckland, building in, of course, to the Trillion Trust Auckland Cup and all the Group 1s on the 31st. So we'll get straight into it. The first of those is the Summer Cup, and it does feature the favourite for the New Zealand Cup, the IRT New Zealand Cup, in Copy That. The market reflects that, Michael, because he's $2.30 is Copy That, and yeah, I think he deserves to be at that quote, Michael. South Coast Arden's $5, $4.40 for Bad to the Bone, but he is stepping up considerably in class.
Yeah, well, Copy That's off 20 metres, Greg. Now, a few starts ago, it seems like a long time ago now, but South Coast Arden was off the front and pushed him close, but there was a 30-metre discrepancy between the two on that occasion. He hasn't been seen at the races since the New Zealand Cup, but here he is at the trials last week, the workouts at Pukekohe. Thought he was okay. The horse who beats him is actually the Anna Donnelly trained Kango, who's in the same race. That's the horse hitting the lead now. That's Copy That 3 wide outside him. Thought Kango actually held him to the line okay. In that workout, that's Bad to the Bone running the third, by the way. In that workout, he was supposed to have started off 30 metres, Copy That. I actually doubt it was 30 metres. When you look at the standing start, he was about 20 metres behind them. Greg, he looked like a horse who needed the run, which you would expect. Most of the horses who went to Cup Week have probably had 3, 4, 5, even 7 days off since then. I think he'll need to improve on that to win on Friday night, but I think he will improve on it, and the small field helps. So I think the bookmakers are actually giving the punters a really good chance here, because him at 2.30 is very generous compared to, say, 4.50 for Bad to the Bone, who is jumping up an enormous way in grade. And South Coast Arden, as I mentioned, the handicaps have really shrunk here for him. All of a sudden, he's found himself back off a 10-metre mark and only getting 10 metres from Copy That. So the best version of him wins, Greg. The question is, how much can he improve from that workout last weekend into this race on Friday night?
And the other part about that, Michael, is Kango is in race number 3 and is more likely to start in that. We hope so anyway, because you've made it the best of the week.
Yeah, I think he will. I think they have the option to go to both, but he's not well placed as a horse who's only had 5 or 6 starts off the front, with South Coast Arden off 10, Bad to the Bone next door to him, and Copy That. And the discrepancy between the stake isn't enormous. Like, you can still win with Kango in a $14,500 race and maybe head to a Franklin Cup in a couple of weeks' time. So I think he's pretty good, Kango, Gregory. I think, as you saw there, he held Copy That fair and square. So if, as we expect, he turns up in race 3, I think it'd be too good for them.
Yeah, well, the horse that should be too good for them in the breeders is Amazing Dream, and confirmation, of course, last week that she's likely to head to the Auckland Cup, where she is now a $4 equal second favourite, I think it is, in the Trillion Trust Auckland Cup. But here she is in the New Zealand Free-for-All. That's her 3 back on the fence, Michael. Spankum's in front. It's clear to everyone here she never gets out. He looks for gaps all the way up the straight. Mark Purdon, well, she is right up to winning an Auckland Cup, and even from gate 8, she should be winning the Caduceus Club Northern Breeders' Stakes. So it's pretty hard to argue that.
Every horse who finished in front of her there has either won a New Zealand Cup or been placed in a New Zealand Cup. Now, when you look at the mares in this week, and they are wonderful mares and you would love to own them, none of them would place in a New Zealand Cup. So Beyond Words hasn't had the chance to, but it's hard to imagine that's the case, and Need You Now simply wouldn't, Greg. Outside of the front line means she's probably going to go back at the start and work around, as the All-Stars tend to do when their horses are drawn wide, work into the race, maybe even sit parked. If she leads, Greg, she's a moral. If she sits parked, she's almost a certainty. I'm actually surprised the bookies have given $1.30 for her, Greg, because you and I were discussing off here before. If you go her and to Copy That, who are clearly the best horses in each race, you're getting $2.99, close enough to $3. That's probably as good a bet as you'll get a weekend, I would have thought.
Yep, I'd be certainly interested in that, Michael. Tim Williams will take the drive on Beyond Words, Mark Purdon on Amazing Dream. Natalie Rasmussen at this stage, I think she's suspended through until Saturday and is likely to head north for the following week. One horse that's not there and won't be there, Michael, you broke the news around last year's winner of the Queen of Hearts in Belle of Montana. She's got an injury concern.
Yeah, look, it's disappointing because this is her winning last year, and we know how good she is. She's a 5 or 6 time Group 1 winner. The horse she beats here, Better's Heart, actually ends up in a Miracle Mile a couple of months after this. She raced back on September the 25th, ran third in the Spring Cup to Mark Shard and Copy That, which was a big performance. Barry Purdon pulled her out of the Cup after that. They just checked out her knees, nothing overly serious, as Barry termed it. They just needed to be flushed out. So a horse with her type of speed, Gregory, who's raced at the top level for a while, sometimes they have that wear and tear. They decided, because they're going to miss the summer and the ladyship at Menangle and the other mares races around the country, there wasn't much for her at the back end of the season. So she's headed to the paddock, so that's a 6-month break, but it wasn't because she had to have 6 months off. It's because after March, there's really nothing for her. So they're confident they'll get her back, Greg, which is good. I thought she would have been a chance because of her sheer speed to at least test Amazing Dream, but that's now gone. And it also just in the market still was Princess Tiffany. Spoke to Mark Purdon yesterday. She's not coming home. So the two proven open class horses, the horses we know can run an open class because they've done it this season and placed at the highest level, Princess Tiffany and Belle of Montana, Greg, not in the Queen of Hearts next week, and that's the reason Amazing Dream is now $1.12 to win that pre-nom.
Yeah, look, plenty of people will be happy to take that, and I'm picking once the barrier draw comes out, we might have a favourite out option. I would think so, Michael, because regardless of where she draws, it's going to be pretty hard to see her beaten, particularly if she wins this week from gate 8, which most people are expecting. But it is disappointing that Belle of Montana won't be there to defend her title. The Northern 3-year-old Stakes is the next one we want to have a look at. Smallish field here, Michael, headed up by Shan Noble, who's come up at flip of the coin. An American Dealer who has been excellent all season. Comes up with barrier number 6, but he's smart enough, I think, to come from there. Here's Shan Noble. This is Cup form once again, Cup week form. This was on show day. Steal the Shows subsequently run 4th in the Geraldine Cup last week after sitting park. But Shan Noble's good enough to win, Michael, and the All-Stars tell me he goes nicely right-handed.
This is good form. First Class, who is running 3rd there and not far behind Shan Noble, I think will be a more significant improver. Shan Noble had decent racing heading into that carnival, whereas First Class, who was one of the better 2-year-olds from the All-Stars probably last season, I think, Greg, he's the big improver. I think it's a really tricky race. Now, just something punters need to know here. Over the years, this race has been a nightmare for favourites, because good horses use this race. They go to the Cup Carnival, they back off, they use this race and go to the Alabar Classic the week after, and usually the Sales Series. A couple of really big names have been beaten in this race because they've got back, they haven't had tactical advantage at the start, and their connections have been unwilling to give them a really hard run for this sort of stake compared to the bigger stakes coming up, Greg. I think this is a tricky race for American Dealer. He went to the workouts last week at Pukekohe and he was good, but I don't see them leading, and therefore how hard do they want to drive him with 2 big targets coming up, and he's already had a hard season. Shan Noble, yes, maybe, if he can go forward and potentially get the lead, but is there any reason First Class wouldn't try the same thing, Greg? I think it's a real chance for punters to get a bleeding nose if they're too confident on what they've seen so far rather than what the drivers are trying to achieve in this race, Greg. For that reason, I'll be happy enough to back First Class.
Okay, first class for you. Tim Williams to take the drive. Revered, probably Maurice McKendry or Brent Mangos. And of course, Mark Purdon will be on Shan Noble. The next of our features for Friday night is for the 3-year-old fillies. And Better Twist has been excellent this time in and has shown more than the ability to not only win this heat, Michael, even from gate number 8, but also the final. Here is Better Twist winning the first heat in the north, only the 4, and it wasn't a lot over them in the end, but sectionally she was very good, home in 56.8, Michael.
Yeah, I thought it was a race which wasn't well suited to her talents. Mango drove her beautifully, just kept her in front, and as they were going up the straight, she was probably getting further away from them because she's probably not a sit-sprint power-up type horse. She's more of a really good stay. I don't take too much out of that race apart from the fact that, you know, she's in good form and she's lost nothing since her huge win in the Sire Stakes 2-year-old championship. But look, Greg, I think she's the best of them. Again, I think this is a tricky race. I think this is a race where she might be sitting parked outside some good horses like She's No Lady or Darling Me, who she's had the wood on. And yeah, she'll probably beat them. But I don't want to be taking short odds to find out, Greg, because Alexandra Park, Premier Race Nights, 22, Fast Track, they might come out and go 2:38.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to be negative to anybody and say don't be backing these good horses, because the All-Stars horses win so often under these circumstances. But let's not forget, Amazing Dream got beaten in this race last year. That's how quick you need to go sometimes when there's good horses against the marker pegs, Greg. So I'm being a little bit cautious this Friday around those horses drawn wide who have bigger targets, whereas I don't think you need to be as cautious. Amazing Dream can overcome it, and I copy that off a back mark, Greg. I just think some of these earlier 3-year-old races there's bigger fish to fry just around the corner.
Yeah, of course, they have the Ladyship and then they have the Sire Stakes, the Group 1 on the 31st as well. Just back to that sales series, speaking with Matt Peden, the bookmakers hope to have that market out later this week, but BD Joe likely to be the favourite over American Dealer and a couple of others, around $2.90, but you'll get to see that later in the week. Addington Raceway last Friday night, another heat actually, while we're on the Sires heat. Let's have a look at La Rosa. This was a really strong performance, Michael. Braveview Kelly was in front, burned up a little bit to get the lead. La Rosa looked like she was only going to run second, but Braveview Kelly kicked and La Rosa just put a big head out.
Yeah, I tell you what, at no stage did you want to be on La Rosa. Like, even 50 from the post, you sort of thought, well, what's going on here? And then she got there. It was a great staying performance. She just kept on going at the same speed. And I think that might be the key to her, Greg. When we saw her have her biggest win about a couple of months ago, she just got a head of steam up and she just kept on charging. And that might be the best way to drive her. Braveview Kelly, again, might be different. She might be a horse who's better driven with a sit after what we saw at Ashburton compared with that. I'm trying not to be disingenuous to La Rosa. I think it's really refreshing, Greg, that Mark Jones has these two horses up against Better Twist and Darling Me, and of course the Northern fillies for that final coming up on New Year's Eve, because it balances it out quite nicely, Greg. So I think Mark's got a really good chance of taking this race. I don't think Darling Me and Better Twist will just turn up and beat Mark's two horses, but of course barrier draws will be crucial for that race on New Year's Eve.
Yeah, exactly, and they get a couple of shots at the Caduceus Club too, so I think it was La Rosa that's going to make the late payment to be part of that. So yeah, should be some excellent 3-year-old filly contests at Alexandra Park, not only this week but in the weeks ahead. Also at Addington Raceway last Friday night, there was a man who rocked up with two horses. He had never had a double before at Addington Raceway, and I got the opportunity to catch up with Steve Bowkey and talk to him about that feat and all things other around his life and harness racing. Well, I asked you before, Steve, how many times you had a double at Addington, but we both knew the answer to that.
It was nil.
Yeah.
Nil, yeah.
Massive thrill for you tonight, though.
Yeah, awesome night. The last biggest one was when we won the Uncut Gems over there back last year, so that was a big thrill then to win a listed race.
Well, swell time, yes, expected that.
Yes.
I'm all about the base, probably a surprise.
I thought she'd be in the top 4 or something, but run a place, but somewhere like that. But yeah, wasn't expected when I thought there's some nice horses there, and racing against the boys. So, yeah.
Pretty big effort, all right. Swell Time's performance tonight dominated from the top end. Once she got there, I guess your confidence levels rose.
It rose when she got an easy quarter because she's been burning out the gate and getting it, you know, doing a lot of work early and then just not finishing off. But she just got an easy quarter. And when she got that, I was quietly confident then. I was, we'll be in with the show now. But yeah, Maddie was really stoked with the way she's lifted the game. You know?
Last quarter in 26.8, and I'm all about the base. They've run 3:10 tonight, but they don't go a lot better, Steve.
No, they don't. Well, she won on 3:12 in the uncut GM, so 3:10's not a bad hit out.
Yeah, very much so. Tell us a bit more about yourself, your background. You're a dairy farmer, but what about horses-wise? How many do you normally have in work?
Yeah, we're running 3 or 4 kind of thing, but racing 2 at the moment, and I've got 3 others, a couple of 2-year-olds just jogging up, and yeah, so we're trying.
Yeah. What about family background? How did you get involved in harness racing, and why are you involved?
I've always loved horses. I had a hack as a kid, and then my father started training. Had a couple of trotters and pacer, and had a cousin that was heavily involved with horses, and then my in-laws, they had gallopers. They bred R1 that won the Melbourne Cup, and they had a lot of good standard breeds. We had one with Morris McHenry, Most Happy Millie. She was a good 3-year-old. Yeah, so it all stemmed from there, really.
Well, these 2 are flying, so the question now is where to next? I guess you probably have to come back here at some stage.
Well, we have to re-evaluate that because we're looking. I'm all about the basis. Going to defend the title at Cromwell. She won the Cromwell Cup last year, so Sam's booked for that, she reckons, so that's good. And then I'll have to see with her now where we go. So
the bloke sitting in the bike had a pretty big week this week, a wedding and now a couple of winners at Addington for you, so he's probably got a bit to pay off. Yeah,
I reckon. So it's good he's had 2 wins, so he's got a bit of money going in, and now he says that Charlotte's got to take in half of it, so he'll have to do a lot more winning, won't he?
I know this is a big thrill for you, so congratulations and long may the run continue.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And I was just looking out at home yesterday. I was taking a photo of a couple in the thing on the tractor, and yeah, they've got a nice Mickey filly starting to work on her, so, and a nice 2-year-old Rock and Roll Heaven colt. So I think they're quite nice horses. So we'll see how they go.
So I just seized the opportunity the other night, Michael, to catch up with Steve because it's typical of the story of a southern farmer who's got a couple of horses. It's not typical for them to rock up to Addington Raceway with those 2 and grab a double, and both of them went terrific.
It's a hell of a thing to achieve, Greg, because there's a lot of professionals in the game who this is their full-time job, and they know how tough it is to win 2 races anywhere, let alone 2 races at Addington, which is the home of harness racing, competing against other professionals. And there's Steve doing it when he has an entire another job. And I've never been a farmer, Greg, but you're halfway there. It looks like it's pretty hard work. So that's a hell of an achievement. It's one of the great things about harness racing. It's one of the real strengths is that people can do this and they can work their own horses and feel that level of involvement. So it's also great we can have them on the show. You know, the show can't just be about the All-Stars and the Duns and all the big superstars. So yeah, well done to you, Steve. And once I see that, Greg, it makes me more interested in the next horse he takes to the races.
Yeah, exactly. You might be stretching it slightly to suggest I'm a farmer.
You're a
I
farmer,
call myself
Greg.
a pretend farmer,
Greg,
and also a pretend horseman.
I live in an apartment, Greg. You're a farmer. In fact, anybody who's got a lawn is a farmer.
Very good. Speaking of lawn, the greener surface out there at Geraldine was where we focused on Saturday, and it was their cup. And this was a good field, Michael. DiCaprio had gone a cracking race in the New Zealand Cup. Steal the Show had been racing in terrific form. And of course, the aged pace winner from Kaikoura, William Wallace, in the Paul Kerr colours for Blair Orange, got the business done.
Took the lead from DiCaprio, then Steal the Show. Cheezel running on. William Wallace, DiCaprio holding second. But the Geraldine Cup heading the way of William Wallace. William Wallace won it, beat DiCaprio 30, the Gilligan's Island or Steal the Show.
Yeah, Gilligan's Island getting in just ahead of Steal the Show there, 3rd and 4th respectively. But William Wallace, he's putting together a pretty nice horse's record now, and he got through on the inside of DiCaprio, and that shot there, Michael, just shows you how wide DiCaprio drifted up the track. I don't think it cost him the win because this horse is already well and truly through and gone, but he's a handy pacer, William Wallace, isn't he?
As I said on the show last week, Greg, these horses who can run handy to the speed in these country cups have a huge advantage because they're good horses, as we see the connections there, the William Wallace connections. Because once you've got a horse like him up against the marker pegs or a horse in front of him like DiCaprio, and you're going even enough time, home in 59 seconds, 28 and change for the last 400, you need to be pretty darn good to come around them and beat them. If there's one thing I could repeat to people again and again and again as we get into Reefton and Westport and Motukarara and Akaroa and all the places we're going to be going, yes, horses coming off handicaps, we know that. But more often than not, horses on the speed, Greg, win on these big race days, on the big grass tracks. I know it sounds crazy, it sounds the most improbable thing in the world, but that's what I've seen over the last 5 years. That and the fact that I think being a lighter driver helps. Most of our drivers aren't that heavy anyway, Greg, but up against the marker pegs, I think he'll work his way through the country cups. He might end up in a Southland Cup and Invercargill Cup or whatever, Gregory, but there's no reason he won't end up in the New Zealand Cup this time next year.
Yep, hard to disagree with that. And of course, next week we go to Methven for their Green Mile, both for the Pacers and the Trotters. And on Sunday, it's the Akaroa Cup. And gee, it's a really nice sort of a field there. A couple of good chances. Rock and Roll Rod had no luck at Addington the other night. And the other one I liked was Arden's Reality. It's only had the one run on the grass. Didn't have much luck in a junior drivers race at Methven. Michaela Lewis drove on that occasion, was luckless at Addington again the other night, so Arden's Reality might be worth an each-way ticket there on Sunday. As we go to a break, we promised you last week, Michael, the royal wedding of the year in harness racing was Charlotte Purvis taking the hand of Matthew Williamson. We have a photo of this, and as I said to Matthew via text last night, I think he's batting well above his average.
You wouldn't be the only one who thinks that, Gregory. She's a lovely girl, Charlotte. They're already obviously lucky enough to be parents. They've been blessed with that already. So, look, congratulations to them on last week, and hope they have a wonderful, wonderful life together, Gregory, and maybe a few more little Williamsons or Purvises, whatever they're going to call them, running around in the sulky in about 20 years' time when there's absolutely no doubt. So I will not be doing this show, and either will you.
No, you're absolutely correct about that. Short break for us here on Your Box Seat. When we return, a whole lot more harness action ahead. Welcome back into Your Box Seat. Michael, it's an exciting time for vendors, preparers and people wanting to buy horses at the yearling sales. This week online, out comes the catalogue for the NZB sales, and of course they'll be posted out Friday, Monday if you're on their mailing list, and if you're not, contact Rachel and the team there and they'll send you one out. Gee, there's a lot to be looking through here. There's plenty of good pedigrees amongst this year's sale, which will be next year, of course.
I've worked this out, Gregory. What I do is I get my catalogue and I leave it in the plastic and don't open it until after Christmas, because I know what's going to happen if I start opening it. I'm going to start driving to people's farms and looking at horses. It's addictive. There's no doubts about that. That's the wonderful drug of when you buy a horse, and I love the sales, Greg. Absolutely love them. This one's a bit different this time. We have the Northern sales, about 134 horses there, 13th and 14th of February. And then we rock on down to Christchurch. Now, we're probably not going to have many, if any, Australians here, Greg. We don't have the restrictions being lifted anytime soon, and you're probably thinking they're not going to be lifted too quickly around Christmas and early into the new year. So there's going to be that online bidding platform which they use for the thoroughbred ready-to-run sales, and even going further back for the weanling sales for NZB standard bred back about May. And they've both been enormously successful. So I think there's no need for the vendors to fear that, Greg. But it's an exciting time. There's a big clump of horses to be sold in Canterbury. I'm looking forward to seeing how it all pans out. But there's enough buoyancy around turnovers and stakes, particularly at the two main tracks, Greg, and some good results coming out of the TAB, that I think that will percolate through to the sales quite nicely. So I think they'll be in for a good sale, even though it's been a remarkably challenging last 8 or 9 months and will be up to that 12-month period for the sales group.
Yeah, February 13 through 17, 134 I think it is in Auckland and close to 300 in Christchurch. One of the crucial parts to this year's sale, Michael's just alluded to, I think a lot of people are going to need to get their horses videoed. Many do already, but I think it's absolutely crucial, and we've got our man Glenn Bourne who puts the show together for us. He's available, Blow Up Media he calls himself, I don't know where he got that name, but if you want to contact him, do it via us, boxeatnz@gmail.com, and I'm sure he can put together a package for you. Right, let's continue on with our box seat and have a look at the premiership tables, Michael. This may well have been very interesting, well, it certainly was up until about a couple of weeks ago, but Robert Dunn has a 1-win advantage over the All-Stars at this stage, but that's only going to be extended, as we well know, post the 1st of January.
Yeah, of course, the market was open. I think when the news broke 2 weeks ago that Mark and Natalie are going to take a step back from training, Robert was about $1.50, $1.60. That's now probably $1.01. I haven't checked, but it's basically should be game over because they have stables in both islands, of course, Robert and /John. Mark and Natalie, look, I'm not sure if they'll have any horses actually race after December 31. The All-Stars is closing. Potentially, I suppose they could have a horse race in Mark's name, but as a partnership, I'm sure they won't. The Telford team's doing really well. They've got a lot of horses syndicated. They've got an open day this week, so on Sunday you can't just rock up there. You have to have RSVP. But Greg, they have 150 owners coming out to see their new barn and their new facilities out there at Stonewall Stud, and they're becoming crucially important to the product in the North Island. They're syndicating horses well. They're advertising nationally. The horses are doing the job. They have a horse who can potentially win the Sales Series in BD Joe, and I think their blueprint's working really well. It's taken a lot of money for Steve to get to that stage, but look, I think there's some really positive things there, and there's a whole lot of people on that list, Greg, who are working really, really hard, but you'd be stunned if by July 31, Robert Dunn isn't going back-to-back in the Premiership.
Yeah, you're right there, and of course Stonewall have invested in the South Island as well. We might do a story on that in the near future too about their investment in the Canterbury region. What about driving wise? Well, Blair Orange looks to win another premiership, and the way things are rolling at the moment, he has 64 wins in the bank. Had an excellent weekend last week. John Dunn on 36, Tim Williams 33, and Matthew Williamson driving very well, 31. Samantha Otley is amongst our top 5, and she thoroughly deserves to be there, Michael, because she continues to drive at a very high level.
Well, the two names on that list who aren't new, but are new enough, is John Morrison. John's doing a super job at 23 wins. When you look at the people around him, he's above Mark Purdon, David Butcher and Ricky May. And obviously Sam Otley. Sam's doing a wonderful job because Blair Orange took over immediately when Dexter left, or actually before Dexter left, Blair was our top driver. John's been consistently our second best, and Tim Williams has been in the top 3. Matty Williamson's always been around there too, so the top 4 don't surprise you at all. And Nathan Williamson is incredibly dominant in the south. But for Sam Otley and John Morrison to be so high up on that list and ahead of an awful array of very, very good drivers. Some of the legends, of course, Tony Hurley, Maurice McKendry, who don't drive as much as them, Greg. But they're still ahead of them. You're still got to do the job. You're still got to win the races. So to both John and Sam, that's a wonderful achievement to be that high on this list. And of course, they're both hard working, so they'll have more chances over the summer than maybe some of those other drivers we've spoken about. Mark Purdon's not going to drive as much. Obviously, you don't see David Butcher driving as much on the circuits anymore. So, yeah, that's the other two names that stand out to me.
John Morrison heads up the junior drivers. Of course, he's on 23, ahead of Mark Hurrell, who's driving well too. He's on 13, Ben Hope 12, and then the girls Sarah O'Reilly and Cherie Tomlinson both on 11. We'll keep an eye on the premierships throughout the season as they roll on. It's generally a pretty good battle. It was last year between John Morrison and Dylan Ferguson. John got there by a short margin. An opportunity for us now, speaking of yearling sales, we sent our intrepid reporter Stacey White down south. She was down there doing some other business, so she caught up with our friends from Shard Farms, who have been doing an excellent job in the last 20 years in terms of preparing their yearlings, so we wanted to learn a little bit more about their operation.
The Shard name is an icon in the Australasian harness racing scene. Can you tell me where the Shard name originated from?
Oh, I can tell you that one. I used to like drinking wine. I don't drink it anymore, which is a real pity. But we like the Shard, C-H-A-R-D, wines from Central Otago, and I really liked the name. And so I just changed the C to an S, and that's how the Shard became Shard. And so all our horses have Shard in them because of Shard wines.
So where did your passion for harness racing come from?
Well, I used to ride. I used to hunt and do eventing, and I loved hunting. And I only stopped about, I suppose 10 years ago now. But I couldn't hunt, and I couldn't have children as well as pot around with horses. So the only way to do that was trying to get into something like breeding. And so we were lucky enough to score a couple of brood mares, and out of one of those we sold the colt at the sales, and I really enjoyed that, preparing them for the sales, just like shows. And so here we had a baby and these colts, and went off to our first sales in year 2000, I think it was, and or it might have been earlier than that, but it was a bit round then, and we really enjoyed breeding, and that's how we got into it. So we spent that money on buying Sly Soki, and she turned out to be wonderful because she had Sly Shard, and away we went. Unfortunately, we turned down the $5,000 colt that was with Sly Soki at the time. She was in foaled with Sly Shard, but that colt ended up dying, but he was a full brother to Sly Flying. We didn't know that at the time, of course. Wow. So, yeah, and that's how it all started.
The most memorable moment of the industry happened on about the 19th to 20th of February of this year when we sold Moe Shard for a whopping $280,000. It's just still bone tingling, and it was actually just unbelievable. To do something like that is just, we went away thinking if we get $80,000 for the horse, we'd be very happy, we'd sell her. And we were walking across to the auction ring 2 or 3 minutes for the auction, and we changed our reserve to $100,000, and we gave the reserve ticket to NZB, and the opening bid was $100,000, and we just went, wow. And as you know, the auction went through the roof. It was just amazing. It was amazing. Yeah, that would be the most amazing thing ever, without a doubt.
So you've bred some really top horses over the years. Who stands out?
Definitely our favourite is Smiling Shard. He definitely is. He's head and shoulders at the moment above anything we've bred. We were on course when he won the 2-year-old Sire Stakes final at Addington. And then we met the owners that night, and they were just incredible people, and they invited us into their group. And then another standout performance was also Max Shard. We flew up to Alexander Park when he won the Young Guns final, but that was a special moment too there, because you sold a horse like that for $200,000, and then to see him win the first Group 2 of the year is very special. But Smiling Shard actually sits out above all progeny. Definitely does.
And obviously you agree, Debbie, by the look on your face.
I do, but Pemberton Shard, darling, come on. She's amazing. She was an amazing racehorse, and we were fortunate enough to race her with a group of friends. And I still remember going over to Sydney. She had actually won a Group 2 here in Christchurch, and then flown to Sydney. And we all went over there. It was just amazing. We had the most amazing time. And yes, she ran 6, but she went 149.6. And she's produced wonderful horses. So we have really good reports. Vanquish Stride got a second in a Group 2 the other day on start number 7. So he's coming along nicely. So he'll do well for her.
We've obviously already touched on you're heavily involved with the breeding and sales side of things. So what's the draft for 2021 shaping up like?
We have 12 horses we're taking up, 1 outside filly, 3 of our own. 2 of those are Art Major fillies of our own, and they're very nice. Then we hear Art Major may not be around for much longer, so you sit there and go, do I keep one of those? We have 6 colts, mixture. We have a couple of rock and roll dances, 1 rock and roll dance, 1 rock and roll heaven, 1 Always Be Mickey, which I really like, a couple of Sweet Loos, and we really rate those. We do, because we have 5 this year already, a couple of 3 fillies. So yeah, we have a mixture, and while we don't have any top lots, it's somebody else's turn to shine.
So, Michael, a good insight there for Mark and Debbie Smith, or getting an insight into how their operation works. And, of course, they've had some excellent horses. They mentioned Mark Shard winning the Group 1 Young Guns final, of course, and Smiling Shard, a two-time Kokura Cup winner, amongst others. And it's an important part of the breeding scene, the southern breeding area, because Southern Bred, Southern Red is their logo or slogan, and it works very well, as we well know.
Greg, I've only got 2 photographs of anything to do with harness racing in my house. Only 2. One's me, bizarrely, driving Lyell Creek and track work. I was pretty hungover, but it's the only photograph I've got which shows me doing any harness racing stuff. The other one's of a horse called Spicy, which was actually called Spicy Shard. We bought off the Smiths. And, just such a wonderful breed. Tony Hurley, he bought it. I deserve no credit for buying it because Tony bought it. I just had a share in it, a baby share. But it won a sales series pace. The reason I'm telling you that story is there's so many people around the country who these people, and not just them, everybody breeds horses. They breed horses, and for people like me, 15 years later, you still have that photograph because of their hard work and their gamble and investment and all the things they do provided me with that highlight and my family with that highlight, and everybody else watching this show has a photograph or a newspaper clipping somewhere. So what breeders do, Gregory, because it's such a huge investment and they get so little probably recognition for it, is the start of the whole thing. So to Debbie and Mark, I can only say thank you because you're one of the 2 photographs on my wall.
Yeah, and of course they sold the yearling for 280,000 Moe Shard last year. I actually caught up with Jeff Whitaker last night and asked him how she was progressing, and he said, yep, broken nicely, has had a prep, really happy with her, so pretty good news on that front too. Some not so good news, Michael, was the passing of a former chairman of Harness Racing New Zealand, huge contributor on an administration level and as an owner. Jim Wakefield passed away in the last few days, and when you think about him, you think about some of the great horses that they raced, and one of those didn't win a New Zealand Cup but went so close to winning a New Zealand Cup in Bettor's Strike. The Victoria Cup was a successful race for him on a couple of occasions, and he was getting into the clear here and looking for a gap when Monkey King had all the momentum and got past him, and Bettor's Strike was so close for the Kentuckiana barn of Crandell Getty. You think about some of the horses that they raced, Michael, the likes of Sparks of Flying, who was a multiple Group 1 winner, won about 25 odd races. London Legend won something similar. But as an administrator, Edward Rennell was quoted during the week as saying he had total respect for everyone in the sport. He was massive on integrity, and gee, they raced some good horses over a long period of time. Texican comes to mind. I think he won a Sires Stakes final as well. So they had a terrific run with the Crandell Getty barn.
Yeah, they did. A very intelligent guy, Jim. I was sorry to hear of his passing. Also proves something to me, Greg, which I believe for a long time, which is having some skin in the game is good. I think for administrators, having raced horses is important. It gives you an idea of the complexity of the industry, and also gives you an idea of the fact that vets and farriers and people who are just horses, and all those people are important and deserve their moments when they can be heard. So yeah, it's a sad time for Jim and for Jim's family. We have condolences to them. But yeah, for someone who's made such a mark on the harness racing industry, Greg, you mentioned some of those horses breeding on. And his legacy will be around for a long time.
Yeah, it certainly will. Of course, race with his wife, Dr. Susan Wakefield. And I don't know how many times I read out their name post-race from winners they had, and they deserved every single one. As we go to a break, exciting concept that we saw for the first time last December was the Fast 10 concept, and I had an opportunity to catch up with Addington Raceway's Darren Williams to find out when it was this year and the fact that there might be a couple of them this season. Darren, we got to experience Fast 10 for the first time last year. It was pretty well accepted too.
Yeah, really good, Greg. Industry's been calling for a long time to run race meetings in a shorter interval. Very tricky, obviously, trying to get everyone to play their part, but no, we were really pleased with how that went. We started early last year, just before 12 o'clock, which isn't ideal when you're trying to get a sort of a party atmosphere going. This year we've got a 2:25 start, I think, something like that, so a hell of a lot better. Finishing about 5 o'clock, so 10 races, 10 starters, all over in 2.5 hours, 18-minute gaps. Fantastic.
Yeah, and short course racing, corded caps or coloured caps, the same as the greyhound, so easy for those who aren't used to coming to the harness.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it's about. It's about them being able to identify their horse, back a number if that's what they want to do, and get involved in it. Something a wee bit more quick-paced. We're going to add quite a bit of music to it this time. Also have an after-match function after with a live band. So, you know, a lot happening on the day, which will make it really exciting.
Yeah, the idea of Glenn Hames, who's heavily involved in some of the country clubs as well, and Tony Russell, it won't only be on the 18th of December, but you're going to roll out another day here at Addington.
Yeah, so if this one works, we'll have 2 of them, and the second one's going to be on St Patrick's Day. So it's a Wednesday, about the same time frame, and that will be Party Central. So a Christmas one and then into a really exciting one. Glenn Hames, as you say, Robin and Tony all working together to put something together on behalf of the industry, and the club really pleased to work with them.
All right, look forward to the 18th. Like you say, it's Party Central for both those race dates, but it's just something a bit different.
Yeah, exactly, and the horsemen really got in behind it. We're really pleased with what they did. The club here are going to look after the horsemen on the day with a wee bit of a Christmas shout. So we're looking forward to doing that for them. They've been really supportive right through COVID. Everything that's been going on at Addington, it's a trying time for everyone, and we've come out the other end, celebrate Christmas and run a race meeting that people can get involved in.
You're in your home straight in your box seat, and again a big thank you to our stable of sponsors. With Garrards, let's head across the Tasman. It's always been a good race, the Be Good Johnny Sprint. Actually didn't win it last year, Colt 31, but he was able to sit outside a couple of Kiwis, turn it up being one change being the other, and that's Northview Hustler pulling off his back, but he sat parked and did this to them.
Turn it up, Colt 31. Great struggle here. Turn it up, Colt 31. It's a monster crush. Colt 31. Colt 31 too good. Beating Turn It Up. All one change.
You've always got to love Chris Barsby's enthusiasm, and this horse, Michael, that's win 46 from start 77 this time last year. He didn't quite perform to that level at Alexandra Park, but we all knew that he was an excellent Grand Circuit performer, and he just proved that again.
That's a big win. I mean, Turn It Up's probably not the horse he was here, because I'm sure they don't work him as hard as they used to, Greg, because his legs aren't that great. And One Change is still making his way into open class, but they're proven Group 1 horses. And he sat parked outside them in 151.9 mile rate for the 1660. I think he's a very good horse in Queensland. I don't discount his other form in other states because he won a Victoria Derby, but just go to show you how hard it is to travel, Greg. The horse you saw at Alexandra Park last November, December, you'd say, oh, he's just a horse. And yet back in their home state, those horses who are in the zone of doing the thing they do every week, which is more often than not in Albion Park, the sprint racing, gee, they're hard to beat. He goes this week to the next race in their Triple Crown for $50,000. He's drawn slightly wideish on the front line, but he'll probably be too good for them again. He's around $2, is Colt 31. Then the week after, next Saturday, Greg, is the Blacks Are Fake. That's for the big money, where things will get tougher for him again, because the two horses around second and third there will be back, but also King of Swing coming up from New South Wales, the Miracle Mile Hunter Cup champion. So, yep, he's in for a busy time, but when you look at him now, Greg, I think he's only 6. He's going to end up winning 70 odd races or something crazy like that.
Yeah, he's honing in on $1 million too. He's doing a magnificent job, and he'll get his chance again this week, although Cruz is drawn to his inside, so he might have to sit outside them again. That's in the Group 2 Queensland Cup. The other feature from across the Tasman was the Australasian Trotting Championship, and it was Majestuoso, as Dan Malachy alluded to in his call, pulled very hard in the run, Michael, but Andy and Keith Gath combine at Group 1 level again in a feature trotting race at Melbourne.
And it's Majestuoso 20 metres in front. Andrew at massive odds is running on, but the leader Majestuoso, Andrew's eating into the margin, but Majestuoso's well clear. Hasn't been the best of nights for Kate Gath tonight, but she's going to win this Group 1, and what an effort from Majestuoso. Her arms will never be the same. They'll be an inch longer on either side.
Kiwi bred, of course, by Majestic Sun out of Rosemary's Luck, who's the Tim's breed. Yeah, excellent performance. We knew this horse was up to that level, but they don't often pull that hard, Michael, and win by that far.
No, there's a couple of gallopers in there, Greg, so maybe a couple of the favoured runners got out of the way early by galloping, so it probably embellished the result a little bit. It was a standing start feature trot, which is rare these days in Australia. Wonderful story. The Tim's breed goes back to a little mare Sean McCaffrey had called How's Lucky, and she was a funny going little thing. She had a massive knee action in front, and she wasn't that good. She was very fast. She won a couple of races, I think, but almost every foal out of her has won, and about 5 or 6 of them have qualified for the Jewels, which is quite remarkable. One of the horses she had who didn't win a race, or only won one race, was Rosemary's Luck, who's the dam of this horse. So she's probably one of the most unheralded broodmares in the country, not for producing superstars, but for producing good, honest, fast racehorses, is How's Lucky, and she's the grand dam now of the Australasian Trotting Championship winner.
Yes, $450,000 in WA goes on the line on Friday night. Will the Bull be winning again? He's going to have to come from the outside barrier, Michael, so it won't be easy for him.
It won't be, and it was beaten last week, which is a real surprise. He's the best horse over there. He just seems to turn up in the biggest races and produce his best form, Greg, so I won't be betting against him, but I find WA a really tricky place to bet. Sometimes, Greg, the leaders just smash them and the other horses have no chance. Other times they come from 3 back on the fence. I can't work it out. I'm not saying I don't like it, I just can't work it out. The one thing I don't need to work out is this. Chicago Bull's better than these horses 8 times out of 10.
Yeah, you're not wrong, and it's a pretty good time of year. Some good money on the line there. Cash and Flow returns to Menangle, where, of course, he won 12 in a row at one stage, about 8 of those under 150, so he'll get his chance to bounce back into winning form post the Victoria Cup, where he was unplaced. Failed to mention last week that Zeus Bromac was a winner of a Breeders' Crown, of course, bred by the late Bob McCardle and his family, and developed by Zachary Butcher here in New Zealand, so apologies for not mentioning that last week. And speaking of Bromacs, Cruz Bromac's run his last race, Michael, of course, the winner of the Cup in 2019. He succumbed to some ageing ailments, one would say, to be fair.
We know how that feels, Gregory. It's not easy as you get older. Won the free-for-all, of course, led up and won a free-for-all. Was actually luckless in the Cup the year he won the free-for-all, 2018, and won a Methven Cup, which would be the least likely race you would expect him to win because, of course, in Australia he was known as a rampant miler. Really good horse, and he probably didn't get the respect his record deserved, Greg, when you consider he won major races in Victoria, New South Wales and the South Island, and was very competitive at 2 Inter-Dominions. So again, one of those horses who I think we'll look back more fondly on than we probably looked upon him at the actual time he was racing. Yeah,
and he got Blair Orange's first ever New Zealand Cup. He was developed by Mark Jones here in New Zealand and was a great advertisement for getting horses ready here in New Zealand, selling them for not too high a price and going on and being a multiple performer at Group 1 level and ultimately getting that New Zealand Free-for-All and the New Zealand Cup. What have we got ahead? Well, before we get to that, we can have a look at some of the bigger bets from last week. The hits and misses from the TAB. 20,000 on Ragazzo Mark, who was in the last race there. It was last Wednesday at Invercargill. That came off, as did the bet on Jawbreaker, who's now won a couple at Addington. William Wallace, 3,000 at 550, and that Geraldine Cup was great shopping. Couple that missed. Braveview Kelly went down a short margin, as we saw before, behind La Rosa. On the cards, was heavily backed in that small field. And your old mate Michael, Matuatana, once it lobbed the front, the $2.60 that person got would have looked like gift week. It must have felt like Christmas until Matuatana did what Matuatana does.
Yeah, I got him. I actually struggled to find a bet of the week last week, Gregory, and I was going to go for a split bet in the trot at Alexander Park, and they ran first and second. What happened?
Lovely.
I backed Matuatana, and he rolled into a gallop as he can. So I hope the 2,500 person wasn't even slightly taking my advice. Some good bets there. The 3,000 William Wallace was a gutsy play. I think that the big bets sometimes annoy people who are restricted because they go, well, I can't get on for that much. But there's 2 ways that can happen. One of them can be a person who doesn't bet that big very often and therefore doesn't win that big, so they are allowed to get on until they breach that. And the second thing is obviously they can be across the counter. And that's the simplest thing I would say to someone who is restricted, because people get annoyed by that. I get annoyed by it. But you can go to the TRB and have a bet. So it's a bit of a dying art, paying cash for a bet, Gregory, but that's the simplest way around it.
Yeah, it is. What about the week ahead, Michael? A couple of meetings on Thursday. Riverton, they get underway around about 2:54, 9-race card there. Waikato Bay of Plenty, that's the Cambridge meeting. Great supporters of your box seat, and a busy time ahead coming for David Branch and the team. 9 there, 5:24. We have the Auckland Trotting Club's couple of Group 3 features on Friday night. They've got 9 starting at 6:08. It's the Tyre General Timaru Cup on Saturday. They've got a 10-race card, 12 o'clock start there. And the famous Grouse Akaroa Cup there on Sunday. They've got an 11-race program, 12:14 the start there. With our good friends from Door Contracting, come up with a new logo for them too, Michael. They want to know what our best bets of the week are this week. We alluded to it earlier in the show. You're pretty keen on Kango in race number 3.
Look, I think he'll start there rather than the Summer Cup. I don't know that, but I think he'd win if he did. I think he's a pretty darn good horse. He's up against another good horse from the Anna Donnelly stable. Anna's team are beautifully prepared at the moment, and they're doing a super job. A horse called Typo goes pretty good too. As we know, he beat our horse, Nevada, a couple of starts ago. By the way, for anybody who was running in Nevada, he's been sold. He's au revoir to the US. So I'll go Kango, Greg, thinking he's starting in race 3. If you're watching this later in the week and he's scratched out of that and going to the Summer Cup, well, then I'm not as keen on him there, obviously.
No, we'll put Typo in for you if that does eventuate, and if you go and have a look at Typo's trial from last Saturday. Very nice, thanks very much. I think he's a pretty progressive sort of a horse. I'm going with Serge Blanco, who of course did a reasonable job for the French back at fullback a few years ago. Luckless last time at Addington, goes around in race number 4 at the Far Lap, and I think he'll be winning a maiden pretty quick, probably this Saturday for the Paul Kerr team. Don't forget about, if you want to get your yearlings filmed, our man Glenn Bourne can do it for you, Blow Up Media. You can contact him, and here is some of his footage. This is from last year's sale, so this gives you an example of his slow-mo ability, and he'll just be loving the fact that he's got 2 mentions on the show, Michael.
Well, he's well deserved. He's one of the best at what he does. It's a small industry, the filming crews in New Zealand. I'm not trying to float his boat or anybody else's, Greg. All I can say to people is someone who's bought yearlings, who's been part of the sales, who's worked at every probably capacity you can apart from auctioneering when it comes to the sales. It's crucial you get good footage. Crucial. Just it's almost the most important thing apart from the actual horse. Get good footage. If you can trot them up, better. If they can get them free running around the paddock, even better. I know that sounds crazy, Greg, but it's just when you're flicking through your phone at 10:30 at night looking at these things and you see one trotting around the paddock or free-legged pacing around the paddock, that's where you go, wow. So I know there's lots of factors go into it, Greg, lots of marketing factors, but for me personally and the people I talk to in Australia, that's what gets their attention. So if you take anything out of the show, maybe that.
Yeah, even more so given our COVID situation and the fact that the Aussie buyers, they're clamouring for their catalogues, according to Rachel Deegan and the team at NZB, and they will be looking for that footage online to do exactly what Michael has just said. Michael will be into it next week. Big preview, of course, leading into the Queen of Hearts, although we will have a dominant favourite. It'll be an excellent program there at the park next week. Thanks again for your input.
Brother, it's been a pleasure. Small fields at Alexandra Park this week, but actually really good fields. There's a few little tricks to some of these races, so looking forward to seeing how they all pan out. If you get a chance to come to Alexandra Park or Cambridge over the next month or so, you're going to see some pretty darn good horses.
Yeah, you certainly are. Confirmation from Phil Williamson too. Majestic Man off the back of a good Cup week, a second in the Dominion. He's making his way to take on Sunday Sun and Bolt for Brilliance, and those feature trots are looking forward to that. That's been your box seat for another week. Michael and I will catch you in 7 days' time.